Well, Chloe, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I've never done it before, so
Yeah, you'll do fine. And I also wanted to congratulate you, on your win and your pro card. It's a huge accomplishment.
yeah, I still feel I still don't it hasn't hit me yet. So I'm still like, just hanging out and I
hmm
definitely it was the goal, but I wasn't expecting it. So
So when you say you weren't expecting it, were you coming in the show just thinking like you're gonna do well, but you're probably gonna need to come back to the Nationals a few times, or you just weren't like giving it much thought? Period.
I think like the biggest thing for me is especially for like a pro card and stuff, you see these girls that have been doing it for 5, 10 years and they're still fighting for a pro card or just now getting a pro card. And I think it wasn't that I had any doubt that like I looked good enough or I was
hmm
good enough. It just was like almost hard to believe because I've only been competing for 14 months. So
That's pretty incredible. I mean, the fact that you've only been like like slightly over a year and you've already got your pro card is pretty amazing. It's I there was a guy in my gym. I don't know. So since you live in Nashville, maybe you know him. Brandon. He worked out in Nashville Athletic Club. Now it's Redcon. He anyways,
okay.
my point, the point, it has nothing to do with my point, but the point is he went to nationals like, man, I'm thinking like maybe like 6 7 years, maybe even longer before he got his pro card. So, and at that point, I'm like, man, I mean, you really got to be committed to keep going and keep not getting it, and then keep trying again. And I guess it's for the love of the sport, but you didn't have to worry about that. You got it 14 months in. So
No, yeah, I think that was like the biggest thing was like timing for me and then like almost a little bit of like imposter syndrome, because there are these girls that have been going back year after year after year. And then it took me, that was my fourth show, second national show.
hmm
And they were like, I didn't even know, like when we were lined up, I didn't even know where I was, let alone that I was going to leave with a pro card. So,
right, right. So you weren't like paying attention in your mind as they're like, you know, like watching you and stuff. You weren't thinking like, oh well, I must be close. Like did you have an idea like it's possible?
honestly, it was so hectic that when I got off stage, I had no clue where I was. I know that they moved me once or twice. I know they were moving some people around me, but I
hmm
got off stage and I was like, I did terrible. That was awful. And like I
Yeah.
had a friend backstage with me and she was like, what do you mean? Like you split center the whole time. You didn't know where you were? And I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
nope.
I mean, it can be pretty intense, right? Because I mean, you're there like focusing on, trying to just present the best you can, and sometimes like you're not paying attention to all the, ins and outs that are happening. So, was it like, were you nervous up there, or were you pretty composed?
I was honestly pretty composed, and only because I had just competed like 2 weeks prior to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got all my stage fright out there. I did a lot better with stage presence and stuff at
Mm-hmm.
nationals than I did at the show prior. And I did have to go to another national qualifier because I took about 8 to 9 months off after nationals last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I would have done that regardless because it did help get some of the like stage fright out.
Yeah. You look pretty composed to me. That's so I was kind of wondering, but yeah, I mean that makes sense. Like doing like I mean, I guess you could say a warm up show. I know you said you needed to do one, but it's kind of ends up being like a warm up show for you, just getting you ready to
Right.
compete. I was talking to I on my podcast right before the nationals. I had a girl, Larissa Johnston, who who won her class in wellness, and and won her pro card. And that's what she was telling me too. Like prior to the show, she was saying, "Oh well, I'm just gonna go. I'm probably gonna I don't expect to win. I'm gonna." Probably she was already thinking about her improvement, and now she's got her pro card, and she still has to do the improvement, but now it's going to be for her pro debut, just like you. So
Her and I actually competed the first time. We both won the overall at the shows we did prior. They were
mm-hmm.
around the same time, and I actually saw photos of her. And she wasn't in she was in class A, I believe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember I messaged her and I was like, "Are you going to nationals? Like, you look so good." And she was like, "Yeah, are you going?" And we talked a little bit. We were at hair and makeup together actually, and then talked a little bit backstage. And
Yeah, that's
the
awesome.
same thing, we were both just like, "What the heck just happened?"
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Like a few girls that I've had shows with won their pro card, so it was like it's kind of interesting. By no means am I like involved in their coaching or training or anything, so I don't have like that kind of connection with them. But because I've had them on the show in the past, watching them win, I felt like a little bit like, I don't know if proud is the right word, because again I don't have that kind of connection with them, but I really enjoyed seeing them win. There was a girl, I forgot her how to pronounce her last name, but Amanda, she won her
Is
figure
it
pro card.
Burnett? Oh no, not
Yeah, she won in figure. So Amanda
okay.
Burnett, I did have her on
Yeah,
the show too. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was a really like cool like experience to watch the nationals. I just did it through the video stream they had, which is pretty awesome, because you could just like watch it from the comfort of your own home.
yeah.
So what got you, you're 14 months in, you got your pro card now. What got you into like training, competing?
Um, so I have been lifting on and off since high school. I played soccer, and then what actually got me into like committing to bodybuilding and lifting and competing. Initially, that was not the plan. So basically, everyone has that like glow up after a breakup. So my get my life together was by getting a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I got like I pretty much hit an all-time low and stopped eating well, stopped training. I was
Mm-hmm.
now a single mom with a toddler, and I was like just couldn't pull myself out of I don't know what I was doing, a whole lot of nothing basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hired a coach as a lifestyle client, um, because I wanted just some accountability. I'm in the military, so I respond
Mm-hmm.
very well to like direct, like, if you're direct and you tell me to do something, I'm gonna be like, okay, and go do it.
Authority. Yeah,
Um,
it's
so
funny.
like respond well to authority sometimes, I guess. But
Yeah.
so I hired a coach for lifestyle purposes just to kind of get me out of my rut, like give me a plan, get me eating back to the gym. And actually, when I started with, it's the same coach, Chris. When I started with him, I was eating so little that he had
Mm-hmm.
to start me at like 1,400 calories. And that was a lot of food for me because I
Mm-hmm.
was barely eating. And then we kind of reversed me from there. Um, and as we reversed me and got me eating enough and kind of started cutting a little bit and I was lifting, I think both of us kind of noticed that I had a good build for wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have that really like lean, trim upper body, and I've always just had big legs.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got picked on for it when I was younger. I get called tree trunks, and it wasn't cool, to have thick
Yeah,
legs
yeah.
back then as a girl. So he was like, he would kind of, show me like Franciel, he'd show me Miss Olympia and like all these girls, and he's
Mm-hmm.
like obviously, you're not there, but you have the frame to do this. And we kind of just started dieting me down to see what I'd look like. And then I kind of just ended up on a stage. Like that's all I remember is I ended up on a stage, and then I did fairly well. So I got I think ninth at my first national show out of like 25 girls. And so and most of my feedback was posing. I was really bad at posing, and a little bit of conditioning. And so I hired a posing coach. You know, we did a longer prep, got a little more conditioned, and then
Hmm.
now I'm here.
Yeah. So what like your first show, did you like, were you very strategic and like, oh, I want to do this show, or were you just like, I'm gonna pick like the closest show or whatever, or like the one that falls in the right time frame and
So
go do it?
we dieted me down, and within we picked a show, and I ended up being 5 weeks out at it. Like we basically, we that was a very rushed prep, my
Mm-hmm.
first one,
Mm-hmm.
because we were kind of still seeing, you know, where my body would end up. And we picked a show 5 weeks out and went for it. And then 3 weeks later I was on a national stage after that first one. So that was a like spur of the moment.
Right. That, I mean, those are big, big jumps. I think, also kind of what happened to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you came in just at the right time of when this wellness division was really coming into its own too, because it's still like a new division. This is the only, the second Olympia, at least here in the States. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
obviously been a big part of, of like Latin American culture and other places as well. But here in the States, or their IFBB, it's still new. So it's like, they're still getting a lot of like raw talent, coming through. And so I feel like you came at the right time, because if there wasn't any wellness, do you think that there like would be a division you'd like to do? Like, would you fit
No,
into anything?
I wouldn't be competing.
Right.
uh, I respect the hustle that, you know, bikini puts in,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think genetically my lower body would ever allow me to get small enough to compete in bikini.
Yeah.
And I have no interest in putting in the work to break down muscle to become bikini. The only other figure or division that I really like is figure,
Mm-hmm.
but genetically, I don't have the upper body.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
my upper body likes to have that bikini look,
Mm-hmm.
which is perfect for, you know, wellness, because they want that bikini upper body and that big lower body, and
Right.
that's genetically what I was given. So
Right.
I don't think that I'd be competing if wellness wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, see, like that's the thing about it, like the argument of, so you have like some people that are like the idea that there's a lot of divisions, and some people that don't. And see, that's the argument for having more divisions, is because genetically people sometimes just don't fall into these divisions. It doesn't mean that they're not good athletes, and it doesn't mean that they can't get in shape. They're just not like fitting that mold, right? Like that was outlined in these other divisions. So like wellness came around, and a lot of the girls that were in bikini, or that weren't like training legs, because they couldn't, like they literally couldn't train legs at all. I was talking to one girl, and she was just like, she's in wellness now, but she said, like, I couldn't even look at like possibly even training legs, because it would just, she would be growing way out of her, out of the realm of what the division was looking for. And so, that's how she operated, and she didn't do well in bikini, obviously, for obvious reasons, so now she's doing much better in a class that actually like fits her and fits her physique, and so yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Just more divisions. How do you feel about it?
I think it's a good thing, and it's hard too, because I feel like there were so many bikini girls that were um, that bumped up to wellness, that were just continuously fighting genetics, and that's just a vicious cycle that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to like not fight it and grow than it would be to fight. Like people
Right.
don't think that genetics play a big part in bodybuilding, but it's huge.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about just like your structure, right? Like even before you start training, like sometimes your structure is what it is. Like you said, like you've had, larger lower half. Like that's, a lot of that is not like, to a degree, is not training dependent. Sometimes like just what you're beginning with, the clean slate, is like, you're already at that like unbalanced level where your, lower half is larger than your upper, and so like, what are you supposed to do? It's really like counterintuitive too, like not to train, right? Like you're in a sport like bodybuilding, you're literally building up your body, and you're telling yourself, oh, but I can't train my legs, because I'll be too muscular. Like it doesn't, it kind of goes counterintuitive of what bodybuilding truly is, which is working out, so yeah, it's interesting. So how did your prep go for the nationals?
For this past one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was great. The one thing that I will like now forever harp on is like a good reverse and a good off season. So we took the, 9 months and we got my food really, really high to the point where I don't remember a single day this prep that I was like truly hungry.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't remember a day that I wasn't satisfied with the amount of food that I was getting. My cardio stayed very low the whole
Mm-hmm.
entire prep. I didn't feel like I was doing anything different than like my everyday life, other than I wasn't getting those like free meals, as quite
Right.
often anymore, or like at all during prep, obviously. But that's the only thing that my food did not change. I just stopped getting free meals. And so we did 20, I think we did a 22 or it was either 20 or 22 weeks, which sounds
Mm-hmm.
like a terribly long prep, but it allowed us to very slowly lower food, if
Mm-hmm.
at all. Like we only had to drop my food twice in total, and it was barely anything.
So you prefer that longer prep?
Oh, I'll always, I would
Yeah.
say maybe not that long, but I would definitely from now on prefer a longer prep, and my body responded extremely well.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you looked really sharp on stage. So all you did essentially, it was take out. And when you say free meals, are you talking about like cheat meals? Is that what you're
yeah,
referring to?
just like I was typically on once, sometimes twice a week. I could go out and have
Mm-hmm.
a cheat meal, free meal, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really the only thing that disappeared.
Mm. And then you started just dropping fat from that, huh?
Yep, pretty much. The scale started dropping from that. I think, yeah, throughout the 22 weeks, we pulled food a total of twice. So,
How different is your off season weight and look, I guess you could say, versus your stage weight and look?
let me see. So I think I stepped on stage at 137
Mm-hmm.
this time. At the peak of my off season, I was about 175.
Okay. Was that like intentional, or did
Yes.
you just okay? So you were
Yep.
trying to put on some weight.
We were trying to put on some weight, some muscle. Yeah, I think that was a 175 was the highest that I got, but at 175, I still kept lines,
Mm, yeah.
because we didn't, um, my fats were still controlled, all that stuff.
Mm.
So I still kept a decent amount of lines up to 175.
So you weren't like looking sloppy or anything like that. In 175, you were still looking good
I
in
still
shape.
looked pretty lean, pretty
Yeah.
lean.
Yeah.
I think, there were a couple people that they were thinking that I hadn't put on much weight at all, and I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I weigh as much as a small man right now, like, but I never looked like it. I never looked like I weighed what I did, and I think that was the goal,
Right.
was to get me up there. And
Yeah. So I wonder if, what that means for you, and I'm just guessing, but what that means for you is there's still like a lot of room for improvement. Even though as good as you looked for the nationals, you still have a lot like potential, a lot more potential, which is, I mean, I would think a great thing, especially going into the pros.
yeah, I mean, my coach and I talked about it, and obviously we've done 2 seasons together now, and so
Hmm.
we're kind of at the point where we know my body, we know what I respond to, we know how much food I can tolerate or what foods don't work well. And so, like, not much as far as like reversing an off season
Mhm.
is really going to change. I think it'll end up being more food, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. I think we're going to end up eating a lot more food, and
Nothing wrong with that.
no, nothing wrong with that at all. I love food. The only, feedback I really got was for the pro leagues, they want my legs just a little bit bigger,
Hmm.
and they kind of want me to build up that upper glute a little bit, so like that shelf.
Yeah.
Other than that, I didn't get much feedback,
They
like negative.
want your legs a little bit bigger. I was just looking at some of the pictures. But
Yes, that's what everyone else was saying too. They're like bigger legs, and I was like,
yeah.
I guess so. So
Yeah. I mean, they know I'm not questioning, since they're the ones that are judging these shows, I guess, you would always defer to them. But yeah, I think you're pretty comparable, like with all the with the pro level. But yeah, so is what are you doing as far as like next steps? Have you considered like anything? Have you thought about, what shows you might want to do, when you want to do your debut, anything like that?
we definitely want to go into another, I'd say minimum probably 6 month building,
Yeah.
because I don't, as far as feedback goes, I don't need a ton.
Hmm.
Um, just some fine tuning, conditioning was good. We know I can get lean enough. So we're looking probably at a good 6 month off season, and looking at shows between like September, November,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
between
it's,
September,
it's
November. Yeah.
Yeah, see the pros, what's interesting about the pros, and I don't know how much people do that in the NPC. I don't think so from my conversations and just from what I know. I'm mostly in the NPC, people just pile on like whatever show, you're doing. In the pros, like it benefits you to be more strategic in like who, what shows you do, because if you win a pro show, that's an Olympic, qualification. So
And
Olympia
that's
qualification,
that's
sorry.
kind of like that definitely went into existence and like our plan. We want to plan it out to where we get, enough time to build, but also enough time to possibly have to compete in multiple shows. I mean,
Right.
everyone's, end goal from a pro show is qualifying for the Olympia. And um, so we are trying to plan it out to where, I can compete multiple times if needed. If not, even better.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
still be able to get that good reverse and building
Right.
time in.
Right. And I mean, like, there's a benefit. You could say there's a benefit to competing multiple times, especially as a new pro, because you'll get that like pro experience. Of course, I mean, everybody wants to win a pro show. That's the key. And a lot of like the bikini girls I know, like because they can keep their peak for so long, they can compete like in multiple shows, just back to back to back. You really can't do that once you have a lot of muscle on your body. But I think in wellness, you could probably at least do a few shows back to back without like losing too much of your peak.
Yeah, as long as they're, pretty close together, you could get a
Mhm.
few. I think you can get a few in there.
Yeah.
You will see girls that will, try and push it. But health markers are like a big thing for me.
Right.
We can do as much as we can to keep ourselves healthy. It is not the most healthy sport in the world, but
Right. Right.
I try and do what I can to stay healthy, and I'm not gonna overly compromise my health to make sure, I'm back to back on stage. But if I can
Yeah.
find shows that are pretty close together and that are like working into a timeline, then I don't see why not.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to push it, on the health markers, because that's a problem, that you don't want to have. A lot of people that tend to do that, like eventually it just they break down, and really it doesn't even benefit them, because once you know, once your health goes, it's like it's really hard to get your, if you still continue to compete, even, you know, that's a big question mark. But then it's really hard to like get your body back to the way it was. It's like once you've kind of like blew that part of your, you
Right.
know, life out. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it for sure. I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good. You got a good head on your shoulders. You know? So you're gonna be like looking for, like you said, in September, November, between September and November,
Yeah, probably closer to the
right?
middle to end of the
Got
year.
it.
And that also makes it easy too, because if you do qualify, you're not far out.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about yeah, and I kind of switch to take this subject a little bit off of you, but still keep it in your division. And now, since you're a pro, this is really going to be, you know, interesting to hear your opinion. But what do you think about like the Olympia, this upcoming one? Do you think Fran, you know, was a good representative of the division? Do you think they chose right,
Oh,
making her? Mhm.
absolutely. I think because if you read, the guidelines for what they want for wellness, I mean, because it's still so new, right? They're like, sometimes you see these girls with these giant upper bodies. Other times you see that like lean, trim bikini upper body, and it's just
Mhm.
like And even that was confusing for me because I was like, do I need a bigger upper body? Like what do you
Yeah.
want?
Yeah.
And I straight up asked for feedback
Mhm.
on that, and they were like, no, like leave your, you can, maybe a little bit, but we don't want you to come in here looking like you belong in figure. And if you
Right.
look at Francielle, she meets every one of those guidelines that they specifically put out for wellness. Like she's not overbearing up top. She's got a very like just trim, lean. She's got
Mhm.
that nice rounded delt, but not too much. And then I don't even know what to say about her lower body. It
Right.
doesn't even look real half the time. It's
I,
incredible, but
I saw like a progress post that she posted recently, and I've seen him off and on, you know, and I mean, I don't really see anybody coming close to getting her this year either.
no.
As long as they keep the criteria the same, it's really tough to beat her. And I mean, has got a, you know, good look to her, but still, even her, I don't think they'll be good enough, you know?
My best bet would be her keeping her title, and I think coming up behind her would be Issa.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
she's hard to beat.
Yeah. I wonder if they're going to have like a battle of many years, kind of like Ronnie and Jay Cutler had. Like, you know, it's just this 1-2 all the time, you know, and Issa just chasing her until eventually at some point, you know, she'll get it. Of course, I'm looking way down, you know, down the line. I mean, I think Fran has got a long career ahead of her as long as she wants, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Are you nervous that at some point the wellness division will start getting bigger? And the reason I say that is, um, so we recently just covered about how like some of the looks are a little bit different, and sometimes you'll get girls that almost have like bodybuilder legs, and then, you know, and they're still like fit into the wellness class, or at least compete in it. And so all the divisions are kind of getting a little bit harder, or at least that's the perception that some people have. And are you nervous that like wellness will continue to like increase their demands for muscle mass?
Um, Not really. My lower body develops as much as I want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not concerned in that area because my lower body just thrives on
Yeah.
it. It wants to be big. Um, if they started demanding more from upper body, I would just start training more upper body. Um, which I do.
Mm-hmm.
I have my back day and I have my shoulder and whatever. They're definitely not as demanding as my lower body days, but
Yeah.
obviously that's something we can manipulate if I get feedback and it's needed. then
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
go from there. But it's not something that I'm necessarily like concerned about.
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting just because the division is so new, but like we said, if Fran continues to win and then and continues to be the look that that they reward, then everyone will try to model that look, right? So you won't have to worry about any kind of like weirdness, happening. At least in the upper
Right.
echelon.
There was a lot of conversation too because I kept seeing little clips of Urishna,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of conversation on her too because I think for this Olympia she did beef up her upper body, and so it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see what feedback she gets on that.
Yeah. What did she come? Do you remember what did she come in last year? Was it
I
like
think four.
fourth? Fourth, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's fourth. So she's not far off top five. That's great. She gets so shredded, and she's gotten
She does,
so
yeah.
much bigger too. I remember I met her a few years ago at an Arnold, and that was before she got into wellness. And I still have that picture with her that we took, and she's so tiny, and she was competing in bikini at that time, so she was small. Comparing her to the way she looks now, it's like night and day. I mean, she's so much bigger, so much more shredded. She's really took her physique to another level.
Which makes me wonder too if when she was doing bikini, how hard she had to train down.
I know. I'm almost like maybe she just let herself be how she naturally would be, and she got like to this incredible physique. It's like more and more that's evidence for being in the right division, right? Like that's
Right.
it's sometimes it's like that. Sometimes you like a certain division just from looking from the outside, but that might not necessarily be the division that you need to be in. So, and I think you can enjoy another division visually, but understand that like your path to victory is somewhere else.
Oh
And
yeah, that's like for with me, and like I love figure. Like figure's probably one of my favorite.
hmm
Um, but realistically, I know I could never do figure, and I
right.
will never do figure. But it's one of my favorite divisions
Yeah.
to watch. I just like if I could grow that upper body, I sure would, but
Yeah,
I don't think that's happening for me.
yeah, I like figure two. That's the division that, excuse me, female division that I started off kind of watching. Bikini is great, but I'm a fan of muscle. So figure kind of has that completeness of like femininity and muscle. And just when they hit those poses and everything, it just looks really cool. So yeah. I don't. Did you hear that they took out figure from the Arnold? Like it's not going to be in the Arnold next year.
I think didn't they take away the whole Arnold?
Hmm.
I saw something saying the Arnold was canceled.
Oh, that would be news if that's true. I don't know. Huh.
I'm pretty
Interesting.
sure, yeah.
Oh man, if the Arnold is canceled, wow, that's a huge show. Like outside of the Olympia
I want to
and
say they canceled the Arnold amateur. Or...
hmm. Yeah, I mean it's possible. I don't know. I can't like verify it right now. I mean I could look it up, but that would take time away from us. But if that's the case, that's a huge show. Like you really don't have like a lot of these big shows. Those are. I mean, the Arnold is really comparable with the Olympia. I mean, yeah, at least at that level.
That was surprising. I think someone sent me an article or something, and I was like,
Yeah,
that's
that would be
that.
wild. That would be wild. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not right, but that would be like if that's true, that would be wild. That's crazy. How do you so you competed on the nationals where was it? Orlando?
It was Orlando both times. Yep.
Yeah. How do you like it? How do you like competing there?
I like competing there specifically because the way that we started my preps and off season, I became a winter competitor, and it is not warm in Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
here. So in the winter, um, so if you tell me I get to go somewhere warm, I'm out.
Yeah, and you know, my wife is from Florida, and it's like all these warmer climates, like Florida, California. They're really like beneficial for fitness, you know, and training. It's like nobody wants to be, you know, just like you. I'm in Tennessee, so nobody wants to be in like freezing 20-degree weather trying to compete. You know, it's
Um,
that's
it's
ridiculous.
not a good time. People would like see me at the gym and I just looked miserable. And everyone assumes when you're in a bad mood, when you're in prep, it's because you're tired or hungry. And I was like, no, trust me, I get my 8 hours of sleep a night and
Hmm.
I am eating just fine. I'm cold
It's just
and
I'm
I'm
just freezing.
sick of
That's
being cold. Like it's like I wake up, I'm cold. I go to bed, I'm cold.
yeah.
I have my thermostat at I think 75 degrees at one point. And my husband is 6'5", 250 pounds. And like, I'm telling you, I thought our marriage was going to end over a thermostat. Like, he had to wake up and go turn it down. And then I had to wake up and go turn it up. And he's
Yeah.
like, then I have a 3-year-old. And poor guy, his room's upstairs. So he's up here sweating.
Yeah,
And
you've got like a sauna out there
oh,
for him.
you can't do this to the whole house. Like we have dogs, we have a toddler. Like,
Yeah.
no, we can't do this. So we actually ended up buying. I don't know if you've heard of the dual layers for the Sleep Number mattress. So you
Mm.
buy each half, and you can control the temperature
Oh yeah, yeah,
on it.
yeah, yeah,
So he bought one for himself and then bought another one for me. And mine's always bumped up to like the heat, the highest heat it can go, and his is always turned down to the cold one. And I think I'm gonna have to buy one for my son too, because
the marvels of modern technology, right? Like
I know
otherwise they would have just had to sweat to death.
he probably would have ended up like getting a short-term rental until prep's over or something. Like he did not want to be in this house because I had it
That
turned up all the time.
that's hilarious. So where do you train? You don't have to like give like specific location, but like what gym do you train in?
So I am going to Gold's, a
Mhm.
Gold's in Clarksville right now. Um, I'm considering looking, so I actually work downtown Nashville.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm considering looking into some gyms in Nashville because I know they have
Yeah.
like some bigger gyms with more equipment.
Yeah, the
Um,
Redcon is right next to me, and like I said, it used to be Nashville Athletic Club. I used to go there, and it's like the only problem with Redcon is they're so expensive. They're ridiculously like priced, and I'm
they
like
have,
I get that they're very like like they've got a lot there, but I'm like it's hard for me to justify like paying that much for a gym membership when some other gym um has it for like a tenth of the price.
yeah, and it's
It's tough.
hard too because if I'm gonna go to, one of those gyms like Redcon or somewhere in Nashville, it's gonna have to either be really, really early in the morning or like on lunch.
Hmm.
Because if it's after work, I have a toddler and I need childcare.
Right,
So
right.
that's one of the biggest reasons for going where I'm going now is because they have a little kids club and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
runs around in there with his friends, and I can basically, unless something's wrong, have a full uninterrupted workout.
Hmm. Are there any other competitors there like at Golds with you?
There are, I know there are a few. There's actually two or three IFBB pros that go there,
Oh, okay.
but one of them I think is like they're men's, and then there's a
Hmm.
woman, one lady that's like women's physique, I want to
Hmm.
say.
Okay, okay.
Um, And then there are a lot of amateur competitors,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of amateur competitors, which the biggest issue I see with a lot of the competitors where I'm going now is jacking up the reverse diet.
Mm.
And, like a lot
Like
of people like to do. So
in what way?
just the post show binges never end, and then it's the vicious cycle. And then I've seen that a lot from the bodybuilders in the area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's why when we talked about your weight at 175, I asked specifically, was that intentional? Because I know a lot of people get extremely heavy, in the off season or post show, and they just their body goes bananas.
So it took us to get me all the way up to the 170s. It took us like almost to the end of that, like, 8, 9. It took a while.
Yeah.
Um, and we never, the biggest thing was like, it never like shot up, it was
Hmm.
gradual. The only time I had like, a little bit of a higher weight jump is if I had like a really dense or heavy cheat meal and, the water retention and the carbs. The next day I'd be a couple pounds heavier and it would disappear. But I never like, um, I didn't have any issues. So, and that scared me, like, right, seeing all these people that
Hmm.
would get post show and just like everything goes out the window.
Yeah.
And I would see people come into the gym specifically that were like stage lean. And then a week later, they were like visibly, 20, 30 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
And I called my coach and I was like, don't let that happen to me. I
Save me.
like I don't care, I've never had an issue with the number on the scale.
All right.
And so my biggest thing was just like, I want to look healthy. I don't need to be shredded. I don't need to be stage lean.
Hmm.
I'd like to keep some lines here and there. I want to be healthy. And that's
Right.
exactly what we did. I still had abs. I still had leg lines. I was visibly thicker, but I wasn't like
Yeah.
unhealthy. And that was the biggest thing for me, was seeing these people that like didn't reverse properly. And I was like, that's not going to be me.
Yeah, that's horrible. And you should be you should be visibly thicker because, there's no reason for you to be stage lean outside of the stage, right? Like it's just unhealthy. But gaining like 20 or 30 pounds within like a matter of a few weeks or a week, I mean, the kind of pressure that puts on your system, like on your heart, on like all your
Oh, yeah.
organs, on your veins, I can't imagine like what your blood pressure must be like when you're doing that. It's unreal. Yeah, that's a tough road. I also feel like there's something to be said about like if you're an athlete, um, you should at least look somewhat athletic all the time. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not telling you have to be super shredded or whatever, but at least when I look at you, I'm not surprised that you tell me you work out. It's like some of these people after their show, if they were to tell me like they work out, I would never believe them because I'm like, you don't look like you work out at all. So yeah, it's a crazy,
That was
situation.
kind of a thing for me too, is I'm like, I just want to look somewhat in shape, but
Right,
still be able to, enjoy my life here and there, like take my son out to dinner or go on a date with
right.
my husband. Like, I'll take a little bit of fluff to do things like that, but it's never it's never gonna go to an extreme.
Yeah,
You got
yeah,
to have that good balance for sure, like
yeah.
off season.
Yeah, I think discipline is a big part of it. I think people get so like disciplined for their show that once their show is over, they're like, that's it, no discipline at all. And and that's when things go crazy.
I usually get 3 to 4 days post show where he's like, intuitively, just eat,
Mhm.
and we'll damage control, just eat, like
Mhm.
whatever. But I usually only make it a day or two before I just feel disgusting. And I'm like, you can put me
Yeah.
back on me. I want my ground beef and chicken, and like my diet doesn't change
Right.
from prep to off season. It doesn't change at all. I just get more food, and I genuinely do like my food. So for me,
Right.
it's not an issue. And um, if I thought for any second that I was bored of what I was eating in my diet, I was reminded very quickly why I eat the way I do, because it took me maybe 2 days to start just feeling like distended and sick. And I
Mhm.
wasn't even overeating. It was just like my body does not respond well anymore to, junk processed
Right.
food.
And I think that's the key, right? Like you said something that like really hits home with me is that you're eating like the same foods and you enjoy the food that you eat. You're just changing like the amounts of them. So it's like if you're eating chicken and veggies, like you're just eating a little more in the off season as opposed to like when you're tightening up. So, and I think that's also a problem. I think people stay on their like good food, good nutritious food when they're in prep, and then once the prep is over, all they eat is like junk food, so and then junk food, I mean, you can get fat off of junk food really easily, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
how many calories is a bag of chips, I don't know, crazy amount, I don't even know. So it's yeah, it gets wild. So but yeah,
I
it
know.
seems like you've got it figured out.
I texted after the show ended. I texted my coach and I was like, I have a list for you. And he was like, what are you talking about? A list for me? I was like, just some like foods that I want incorporated into my meal plan off season. And he's like, oh, here we go. Like, you're going to be throwing in cookies, like,
Uh
little Debbie's, like, whatever. He's like, no, we're not doing this. And I was like, no, I just want some tortillas and some strawberries. And he was like,
uh
really? Like, and then
yeah.
really? And I'm like, yeah, I just want some more color, some more fruits.
You're like so tame. Like everybody else, he probably gets messages from like that are talking about like pizzas and all kinds of, crazy stuff. So,
No,
wow.
I asked for, I think, some strawberries, some Greek yogurt, and some tortillas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely not gonna, spoil your off season, that's for sure. So, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think that's going to be, really beneficial for you going forward too, because that weight fluctuation back and forth can really damage your physique too. Like people think they come back better, but I don't think so. I think it's a detriment to you. So if you can avoid that, that would be like a huge benefit down the road as you compete more and more.
No, and I tell people too, because for me, like, so last year I stepped on stage at 146 and then off season up to 175. This year I stepped on stage a lot lighter at
Right.
136 or 137. Um, but for me, it's a good 30-pound weight gain, but it's over, eight,
Right.
9 months. And not everybody is going to have that. Like 30 pounds, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm just a dense person, and that's what my body does, and I still
Right.
stay healthy that way. But I don't think typically most people aren't gonna have as big of a fluctuation as I do.
Right. And like you said, I mean, that's for quite a long time. So it's not like you're putting on 30 pounds in a month. It's like this is, a few pounds every so often, and trending to that point. So, and it looks like when you cut, you do the same thing. So, you trend down in a slow fashion. See, that's way more healthier than just shotgunning, way back up and down.
My first prep, because that one was kind of like our shotgun trial and error.
Yeah.
I I think I was traumatized because every time, I'd check in with my coach, and this prep, I would check in with my coach and he would text me in the morning, and the first thing I would say is, are you taking food? Are you taking food? What are you taking from me? And he's like, nothing. I'm not taking anything from you. What do you mean? I'm like, oh, are you taking my rice cakes today? And I'm like, he's like, stop asking so many questions. I'm not taking your food. And I was like, because that's all I knew was that, like, that shotgun
Right.
prep, that quick prep. And that's what I thought it was supposed to be like, was you're doing tons of cardio, you're hungry, every week food is disappearing.
Yeah.
And I was expecting that, a second time. I was like, kind of like, dang, we got to do this again.
Yeah.
And he only took food from me twice, and it was very minimal.
I see. That's the thing. I think a lot of people think that going into like bodybuilding because they hear of other people that do it that way, that shotgun approach, right? And sometimes they do look good doing that, and so people go in thinking, "Oh, that's the way to do it." But I think it's
Not
refreshing I think it's refreshing seeing people like you. And I know I was listening to another guy and who also said the same thing. Like his prep was amazing. He wasn't bad at all. And I think it's refreshing and good for people to hear you and people like you to say that while they still come in on stage looking incredible. Because it's like if you were to say that and you look terrible, they would say, "Oh, well, that's why she looks terrible because she's not doing well." But because you're like you're taking this approach and you're placing very high, it's like it's telling people, oh no, that's like the right way to do it is this, the approach that you have as opposed to shotgunning everything. So
And I think that's especially like, that's the part of it that I want people to hear, because I also have that same assumption that like you're meant to be starving on prep, like you're
right.
meant to be doing tons of cardio. It's not meant to be fun, it's meant to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I'm like sitting here, for 22 weeks anticipating the miserable,
Right.
and it never came.
Yeah.
And now it's like over, and I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah.
I left with a pro card, and not once was I texting my coach like, I'm hungry. If I got tired, it was probably, towards the very end, because eventually you're so low in body fat that like
Right.
at
Right.
that point I think I was overworking to stay warm,
Yeah.
and that's why I was so tired. But it wasn't even comparable to my first time.
Yeah.
And now it's like I'll never have any I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Like, starting another prep will never be intimidating to me
Hmm.
after
Well, that's what I was going to
one.
mention. It's probably it makes bodybuilding more enjoyable for you. So you're probably looking forward to go, continuing to bodybuild as opposed to if it was just miserable, you would hate it. You probably, to be honest, you probably wouldn't do it. I mean, at some point you would just be like,
I'm not gonna
there's
lie,
no reason.
I was dreading this prep a little bit
Mm,
because of my first one, because
right,
it's what
right,
I had to do,
right.
because we were 5 weeks out. And so like as it was kind of rolling around closer to prep, I was like, it's gonna suck. Like I don't know if I
Yeah,
want to do this. And my coach was like, trust me, this one will be different.
yeah,
Like so much different. And um he wasn't wrong.
yeah,
I'm a very like structured person in general, so having like a good prep like that, as well as like the structure that comes along with prep, I was thriving.
yeah.
And I had a lot of like just life events come up. So I went through two army schools while I was in prep. I went through ALC to pick up staff sergeant, and then I went through recruiting school to become my current position now, to become a recruiter. Um, I went through a custody battle
Mm,
because my son is from a previous marriage,
mm,
and the only that's literally what kept me like grounded. I had
yeah,
to wake up in the morning because I had to do my cardio, and
right, right,
I
right.
had my planned out meals. And I think that was like the one thing that like I had a great prep. Life was harder, like my outside life was harder than prep was. And I think prep was the thing that was keeping me going this
Yeah,
time around. So
that makes sense, and that's a good way to look at it too. Especially like you have that fondness for prep, and so like in the future it'll make things a lot easier. But well, hey, Chloe, I really appreciate your time coming on the show. It's amazing, having you on. If somebody wanted to reach out to you for more podcasts or wanted to pick your brain a little bit, what would be the best way to do it?
probably Instagram.
Okay, sounds
Instagram
good.
probably be easiest, or I'm quite frequently in my email because of my online shopping addiction. So I'm always trying to see like when my stuff's coming in. So I'm in my email all the time, but probably email or Instagram.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and link everything down at the bottom. So if you want to reach out to Chloe, it'll be easily accessible for you. And again, Chloe, thank you so much for your time. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you for
And
having me.
congratulations again.
Thank you.
All right, take care.